Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving into a story from Indonesia that is, well, is both heartbreaking and deeply unsettling. A case that just refuses to stay buried.
Yeah. We're looking at the tragic deaths of two young people, Vina and Rizky, in Cirebon back in 2016. It started looking like one thing, but it's since unraveled into something far more complex, full of twists that really challenge what everyone thought happened.
Exactly. And our guide for this deep dive is based on a YouTube transcript that really lays out the whole tangled narrative. So our mission today is to walk through the facts, the really strange claims, and the surprising turns of events surrounding Vina and Rizky's story, drawing only from the information we have from that source.
And try to understand why, years later, this case is suddenly back in the spotlight and demanding attention.
So let's go back to the beginning. August 2016. The young people at the heart of this are 16-year-old Vina Devi Arsita and her boyfriend, Mohammed Rizky Rudiana, known as Rizky, also
Wow.
16.
Right. The source paints them as, a pretty typical young couple, dating for about 6 months, apparently even had dreams of getting married after they finished vocational school.
And something notable about Rizky, right off the bat, he was part of a motorcycle gang. This detail, it becomes pretty significant, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, because it seems like the authorities kind of latched onto that early on.
Okay, so fast forward to Saturday evening, August 27, 2016. Around 7 p.m., Vina asks her older sister, Maripina, if she can go out for a ride with Rizky.
Maripina agrees, gives her the usual warnings, be careful, be back on time, just a normal exchange.
But tragically, that simple goodbye was the last time Maripina saw Vina alive.
Then later that night, the call comes. Not Vina checking in. It's around 1 a.m. and it's from a hospital.
Yeah, the call said Vina was in critical condition. The initial report to the family was that she'd been in a really serious motorcycle accident, hit a utility pole.
And what the family saw when they got to the hospital, it was just devastating. Vina's injuries were horrific. Her head was described as swollen like a water balloon, broken neck, broken jaw, her hands and feet were crushed.
Just awful. And despite everything the doctors tried, she died right there at the hospital in front of her family.
And Rizky, he didn't even make it that far. He'd already died at the scene, what they were calling the accident scene. His body also showed severe injuries, extensive bruising, clear signs of heavy impact, especially to his head.
So given Rizky was known to be in a motorcycle gang, and it looked like a motorcycle crash.
Right. The initial police conclusion seemed, maybe straightforward, if tragic, a traffic accident. They suggested Rizky was probably speeding, maybe even racing because of his gang ties, lost control, hit a pole, and both teenagers died as a result.
But hold on. That official story, it just didn't sit right with Vina's father. Not at all.
No. Looking at the sheer brutality of the injuries on both of them, he just couldn't make it fit with a simple collision. Hitting a pole, something felt really wrong.
And he didn't just accept it. He went to see for himself, right?
He did. The source says he visited the spot the police identified this elevated road in Kapongan village. And what did he find?
Well, the area was surprisingly clean. The pole they supposedly hit, the sidewalk right next to it, completely undamaged. That's just not what you'd expect from a fatal high-speed crash.
Exactly. And then there was Rizky's motorcycle. You'd think after a crash like that, the bike would be mangled.
Right. But the source says it only had minor scratches. More like it just fell over, not a violent impact.
And maybe the strangest detail, Vina's phone. It was found at the scene.
And he was completely undamaged.
Think about that. Vina's horrific injuries, crushed limbs, severe head trauma. How could a phone, presumably on her or near her during that, come out totally unscathed? It just felt incredibly unlikely for a real crash.
So putting all these pieces together, the injuries not matching the scene, the bike, the phone, Vina's father reached a chilling conclusion.
Yeah, he suspected this wasn't an accident at all. He thought it was an assault, a murder, staged to look like a road fatality.
But the police, initially, they weren't buying his theory.
No, they initially dismissed his concerns. They stuck to the accident story, maybe using Rizky's gang membership as a convenient explanation for reckless driving.
And that could have been it. Case closed. Tragic accident.
But then, just a few days later, the source says maybe 6 days after the deaths, the story takes this really extraordinary turn.
The family gets a phone call. A shocking one.
It was from the brother of one of Vina's friends, a girl named Linda, and the claim, well, it was pretty hard to process. He told the family that Vina's spirit had possessed his sister, Linda.
Possessed her.
Yeah, and that Vina, through Linda, wanted to tell them the truth about what really happened that night.
Wow. You can only imagine the family's reaction. Hesitant, skeptical.
Probably all of the above, but also desperate, right? Grasping for any kind of answer. So they decided to go to Linda's house. And we should be clear, like the source material is, the supernatural element is obviously highly unusual, very sensitive.
Of course. But it's presented as the thing that changed everything.
Right. So they get near Linda's house and they apparently hear weeping, sobbing coming from upstairs, and the sound, it was eerily like Vina's voice.
And when they went into the room,
they saw Linda. But the account says that this person, claiming to be Vina's spirit in Linda's body, ran and embraced Vina's father, saying, "It's me, Vina."
That must have been incredibly intense.
Absolutely. What followed was this deeply emotional and disturbing account. Vina, speaking through Linda, was crying, expressing immense pain. She told her father straight up, "Don't believe the police. It wasn't an accident."
She said she was murdered.
Yes. Tortured, beaten with sticks, gang raped, and then murdered.
Oh my God. Did she?
Yeah.
Did Vina give details?
Yeah, and the source goes into quite a bit of detail. Apparently, Vina's sister Maripina recorded this. According to this account, Vina and Iki were ambushed while riding. Iki was hit from behind with something hard, causing the motorcycle to crash.
So they were attacked before any supposed accident.
That's the claim. Vina fell, maybe blacked out for a second. When she came to, she was in a nearby empty lot, and a group of boys were gang raping her.
Horrifying.
And when she tried to fight back, the violence escalated terribly. They smashed her hands with bricks. They reportedly ran motorcycles over her legs so she couldn't escape, slammed her head against the asphalt repeatedly.
And Iki.
He apparently tried desperately to help her, but he was also savagely beaten.
So the claim is they both died right there.
In the empty lot.
Yes, died from the assault. And then their bodies were moved, and the scene was staged to look like that motorcycle accident involving the utility pole.
Did Vina name anyone?
She did. A crucial piece of information. She named one attacker, Pegi. She claimed he was actually a friend of Iki's from the same motorcycle gang.
A friend. What was the alleged motive?
According to the source, Pegi had apparently liked Vina, tried to flirt with her. Vina rejected him. The account even mentions her spitting at him once. So the alleged motive was revenge for that rejection.
And did she say how many attackers there were in total? Vina claimed there were 12 people involved. Pegi, plus 11 others. And she made another alarming claim about Pegi.
What was that?
That he'd already fled to Jakarta and was being protected because his father was supposedly a police officer.
Wow. That's a lot. Did any of this resonate with the family besides the shock?
Well, interestingly, Vina's sister, Maripina, did corroborate part of it. She said Vina had mentioned before that someone was harassing her, someone who was interested in her. She didn't know his name was Pegi at the time, though.
So even setting aside the possession aspect, the idea that someone named Pegi might have been targeting Vina wasn't totally out of the blue for them.
Exactly. It suggests there might have been some basis for that part of the claim, regardless of how the information came out.
So now the family has this audio recording, however it came about, plus their own evidence from the scene.
Right. They took it all back to the police. And this time, maybe because the details were so specific, or maybe because the accident theory was looking weaker and weaker, the police agreed to take another serious look.
And the investigation reopened. What did they find this time?
They started following new leads. They talked to Iki's friends from his gang, the XTC gang, and those friends confirmed something important.
What was that?
They confirmed that on that night, August 27th, they had been riding together, but they were suddenly chased by another gang identified as the Mert gang. They all scattered, and in the chaos, Iki and Vina got separated from the main group and were pursued alone.
Okay, so there was a chase involving another gang.
Yes. And then a key witness emerged, a satay vendor who was working near the location. This vendor backed up the story of the chase, saw Iki and Vina being pursued by another group on motorcycles.
Did the vendor identify them?
Even better. The vendor identified the attacking gang and was able to tell the police where they usually hung out.
That's a huge break.
It led to quick action. On August 31st, 2016, just a few days after the family brought in that new information, police raided the hangout spot. They found and arrested 8 suspects there, just drinking, aged between 15 and 27.
And did they talk?
According to the source, after some intense questioning, one of them confessed. And the police also got hold of phone data. Apparently, it showed chat messages discussing plans to attack Iki and sexually assault Vina.
Wow. So digital evidence, too.
Right. With that first confession and the phone data, the other 7 suspects also confessed. And their confessions were crucial because they didn't just admit their own involvement.
They named others.
Exactly. They named 3 additional accomplices. And significantly, they explicitly named Pegi. So, based on the suspect's own admissions, the total number involved jumped to 11.
Okay, so now the official story shifts dramatically from accident to premeditated murder and assault.
Correct. Which led to the next logical step, though it was somewhat delayed. On September 13th, 2016, that's over 3 weeks after the deaths, police exhumed Vina and Iki's bodies for autopsies.
Why the delay? That seems quite long.
It does raise questions, doesn't it? Especially about the thoroughness of the initial investigation when it was still being treated as an accident. Particularly regarding, potential evidence like DNA from a sexual assault. Waiting that long isn't ideal.
But the autopsies, when they were done, did they confirm things?
Yes, they provided crucial confirmation. Forensic doctors confirmed Vina had been sexually assaulted, and both bodies showed injuries consistent with repeated blunt force trauma, basically, being beaten with hard objects, not sharp weapons.
Which aligns with the details from the alleged possession account.
It does. So the official conclusion was now firmly murder, not an accident.
And the legal process followed.
Yes, based on the confessions and the forensic evidence. On May 26, 2017, the court reached its verdicts. 7 of the adult suspects, aged 20 to 27, were convicted of premeditated murder and gang rape.
What sentences did they get?
Life imprisonment. The one minor involved, identified only as ST, got an 8-year sentence.
So 8 convictions.
But didn't the suspects themselves say there were 11 involved? Exactly. That left 3 suspects still at large, including Pegi, the one named in the possession claim, and by the other suspects. They were fugitives.
And then, did the police actively look for them?
Well, for a long time, it seemed like the case just went cold. For the next 7 or 8 years, reports suggested the police weren't really making much progress in finding those remaining 3. The case kind of faded from public view, except, of course, for the family still waiting.
Until recently. What brought it back?
It wasn't a quiet police breakthrough. It was actually a cultural event. In May 2024, a horror film came out in Indonesia, Vina, Before 7 Days, based directly on this case.
A horror film. Wow.
Yeah. And it was apparently a massive hit. It completely reignited public interest and, frankly, public outrage over the fact that killers were still free. The pressure on the police to find the fugitives suddenly became enormous. Everyone was talking about Vina and Iki again.
So what did the police do under that pressure?
They responded, saying they had been trying to find the fugitives all along, but claimed it was tough because they'd likely changed identities, moved around. To help, the police officially released the names and photos of the 3 fugitives, Andi, Donnie, and Pegi.
And did that lead anywhere?
Remarkably, yes, and quickly. On May 21st, 2024, just about 2 weeks after that film release blew the case wide open again, police announced an arrest.
They got Pegi.
They announced the arrest of Pegi Setiawan. He was now 27, reportedly working as a construction worker in Bandung, which is about 140 kilometers away from Cirebon.
Okay, so finally, maybe some closure.
You'd think so. But Pegi's arrest, instead of tying things up, actually seemed to unravel the case even more. It introduced major confusion and contradictions.
How so?
Well, almost immediately after arresting Pegi, the police revised the total number of attackers down. Remember, the suspects confessed to 11 involved. The possession claim said 12.
Right.
Police now claim there were only 9 attackers in total.
Wait, what happened to Andi and Danny?
Police said they lacked sufficient evidence to prove Andi and Donnie were involved. So effectively, they were saying the newly arrested Pegi was the last one caught. And the case, with 9 identified perpetrators, the 7 lifers, the minor ST, and now Pegi, was essentially solved.
That seems sudden. And convenient, maybe?
Well, that's where the questions really exploded. Because when the police presented Pegi to the media, he publicly and very forcefully denied everything, said he had nothing to do with it, didn't even know Vina.
Denied it completely.
Completely. And this stark denial, right after the police just dropped 2 other suspects, fueled huge public and media skepticism. People started asking, is this the right Pegi? Or did the police, under all that pressure from the movie, just arrest someone to close the case?
Were there reasons to doubt it was him besides his denial?
Yes. His family and coworkers came forward with what they claim is a solid alibi. They say Pegi was in Bandung on the night of the murders, having dinner with a cousin, sleeping at his construction site lodging. They even said his motorcycle was back in Cirebon with his parents, not with him.
Which directly contradicts him being in Cirebon involved in a gang attack that night.
Exactly. The doubt was so significant that even the lawyer representing Vina's own family publicly expressed uncertainty about whether this arrested Pegi was the actual culprit from 2016.
So the arrest didn't bring clarity, it brought more questions.
A lot more. And then came perhaps the biggest bombshell: claims from the men already convicted.
The ones serving life sentences.
Yes. Reports emerged that the 7 men serving life claimed they were tortured by police back in 2016 to force false confessions. They apparently tried to retract those confessions in court during their trial, saying they weren't involved, but they were ignored.
Torture. That's a massive allegation.
It is. And the account from the minor, ST, who got 8 years, was particularly graphic. He alleged about a week of torture being stepped on, beaten until his head bled, forced to drink urine until he finally confessed, even though he claims he wasn't involved.
Is there anything to support these torture claims?
It's difficult to say definitively from the source, but it mentions that photos from the 2016 arrest reportedly show the 8 initial suspects with visible injuries. At the time, police apparently said it was from resisting arrest.
But now, those same photos could be seen as evidence supporting the torture allegations.
Potentially, yes. It adds another layer of doubt. And then another major challenge to the official story emerged.
All of that.
Representatives from 4 Cirebon motorcycle gangs, including XTC, Aki's gang, and MISC, the gang accused of the attack, they issued a joint public statement.
Yeah.
They claimed that none of the 7 convicted men, nor ST, nor the recently arrested PZ, were members of any of their gangs at all.
Wait, but the whole police narrative was built on this being a gang conflict, right?
Exactly. This statement directly contradicts the fundamental motive and context the police had presented for the murders. If they weren't gang members, why this gang-related attack?
So, with the original convictions now under suspicion due to torture claims and the new arrest looking shaky, where did the focus turn?
Inevitably, it swung back to Vina's friend, Linda, the one involved in the alleged spirit possession that kicked off the murder investigation.
Right. People started questioning that whole part of the story again.
Naturally. Was the possession real? Or did Linda, maybe under pressure or for some other reason, invent the story? Could she have been trying to divert attention from something or someone else?
Has there been anything new regarding Linda?
Well, there's apparently a recent claim from a new witness who says they actually saw Linda with Iki and Vina on the night of the incident.
Oh, really? Does Linda confirm that?
No. Linda gave an interview in May 2024 after all this resurfaced. She denied being at the scene. She denied knowing any of the convicted men or the arrested Pegi. She claims she only knew Vina because she briefly dated one of Iki's gang friends about 6 months before the murders and hadn't really been in touch since.
What about the possession claims?
She insisted she genuinely has experienced possession episodes since she was a child and didn't make anything up about Vina's spirit. She said she just wants the case solved quickly so people stop suspecting her.
So where does all this leave the case right now? It sounds incredibly messy.
Extremely messy. According to the source material, it's basically back under intense investigation. The authorities are trying to figure out first if the Pegi they arrested is the right guy. But also, critically, they're having to reevaluate the convictions of the other 8 people, given the serious torture allegations.
Could initial mistakes have contributed to this mess?
The source suggests possible flaws in the very beginning. For example, maybe not properly collecting or preserving key forensic evidence like DNA from Vina's body during that delayed autopsy. If you don't have that crucial evidence now, years later, it makes proving definitive links incredibly difficult.
And amidst all this legal chaos, confessions, retractions, potential miscarriages of justice, we can't forget the victims.
Absolutely not. Through all these layers of conflicting stories, police conduct questions, investigative uncertainties. The undeniable fact is the tragic human cost. Vina and Iki, they'd be 24 today, maybe married, like they dreamed. Their lives were cut short by horrific violence. That's the heart of this, no matter how complex it gets.
This case just leaves us with so many disturbing questions, doesn't it? Questions the source material really forces you to confront. Is the arrested Pegi the real killer? Were those 8 men wrongfully convicted based on coerced confessions? What is the truth behind Linda's claims? What really truly happened that night? And who are the actual people responsible for these brutal murders?
Yeah, it's a lot. So to recap this whole deep dive, we started with what looked like a tragic accident. Then the family's persistence, fueled by that extraordinary controversial possession claim, led to the case being reopened. Arrests followed, convictions based on confessions. Then years of silence.
Until a film blew it all open again,
Yeah.
leading to the arrest of the main fugitive, Pegi. But instead of closure,
It brought chaos. Allegations of torture, questions about the original confessions, conflicting alibis from the new suspect, contradictions from the gangs, serious doubts about the entire investigation, past and present.
It's a story that really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About how hard it is to find the truth when you have alleged supernatural events, potential police failures, massive public pressure, all tangled together. What does it actually take for justice to prevail in a situation this complicated? And how much can you trust any single piece of the narrative?
A truly haunting case with questions that linger years later and may continue to do so.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into a very complex and tragic story.